The sun was low and red when I entered Hollow Bend, the kind of dying light that makes the world look like it's holding its breath. My horse, Hollowfoot, stumbled from exhaustion, and I couldn't blame him. We'd been riding for days, letting the land decide where we went because I had no destination left to claim. The trail dust had worked its way into my clothes, my beard, my bones. I was tired in the way a man gets when he's running from something inside, not something behind him. Hollow Bend wasn't a place travelers bragged about. It wasn't even a place travelers meant to end up at. It simply existed. Leaning wood, faded signs, and heat-baked ground that looked like it hadn't seen rain in 100 years. Folks there didn't smile, didn't lift their eyes unless they had a reason. Everyone carried something heavy, and no one cared about anyone else's weight. I intended to water the horse, buy grain if I could afford it, and leave before the night chill crawled in. But fate doesn't give warnings, only moments that hit you like a hammer to the chest. I heard voices before I saw the crowd. Laughter, jeering, the crude kind of humor that grows in men who've forgotten what it means to fear God or conscience. Curiosity pulled me closer, though I felt my jaw tighten before I even understood why. The crowd circled something near the center of town, right by the trading post, where deals were made and regrets were sold cheap. The afternoon light struck the beam they hung from, making it look more like an execution frame than a display rack. And then I saw them. 3 women, Apache by their dark braids, by their necklaces of polished bone and copper beads, by the fire still flickering in eyes that had every reason to give up burning. Their arms were tied behind their backs, and ropes wrapped around their ankles held them upside down, suspended from the beam like wild game strung for skinning. Their long hair brushed the dirt, strands picking up dust and mud and blood. One of them was barely conscious, her lips cracked and bleeding. Another blinked at slow intervals, her breath strained but defiant. The third stared straight at the horizon, as though if she could just keep looking forward, she would still belong to the earth and not to the men around her. The man who stood in front of them wore a vest of worn leather, hands on his hips like he was presenting a fine horse he'd broken. Blonde beard, a grin that never reached his eyes, the kind of man who didn't become cruel, he was born that way. Got these beauties fresh off the ridge, he barked, slapping his hand against one of the wooden posts. Warriors tried to protect them. Didn't end well for 'em. These 3 surrendered. Means they're trainable. Laughter rolled through the crowd like a wave of filth. Someone whistled. Someone else called out a price, not bothering to say for what purpose. The girls didn't react. They were past reacting. They were enduring. And people underestimate what endurance means. Endurance is not weakness. Endurance is iron with a pulse. My vision tunneled. Not in anger. Not even in shock. But because of a mark. On the shoulder of the woman in the center, dark ink formed a crescent moon split by a clean, straight line. The symbol was small, but I felt its weight like a hand on my chest. It was etched deep into my memory, though I had seen it only once before. 2 winters ago, I had been dying. A bullet had torn through my side during a skirmish high in the mountain passes, and my unit had left me behind. They didn't say it aloud, but I saw it in their eyes. They didn't think I was worth the trouble. The snow had swallowed me up, and I lay there waiting for darkness to finish what the bullet started. But someone came, an Apache scout with quiet steps and steady hands. He didn't speak, didn't ask who I was or what uniform I had worn. He only lifted me, half carried, half dragged me to a hidden cave where a fire burned small and warm. He bound my wound, fed me broth he made from dried meat and herbs I couldn't name, and sat with me through the night. His presence was like the silence of snow, deep, grounding, undeniable. At dawn, he left. But the last thing I saw before he slipped back into the wilderness was that mark on his arm, the crescent moon split by a line. Seeing it now, on her, I felt the world tilt sideways. My body moved before the thought formed. I pushed through the crowd. Someone cursed at me for shoving past. I didn't hear them. The traitor looked up, smirk curling across his face. "You interested, stranger?" he drawled. I opened my mouth, but the words didn't come at first. I was staring at the woman with the mark. Her face was drawn with exhaustion, but her eyes were the same as his. Quiet strength, a refusal to surrender her soul even if her body had been bound. The traitor chuckled, misreading everything. Thought so. Good choice. She's the stubborn one. Might take some breaking in, but... My hand clenched so hard my knuckles cracked. My voice tore from somewhere deep, somewhere fierce, somewhere that remembered debt, remembered mercy, remembered fire in the snow. Stop. The crowd stilled. I'll buy them, I said, louder, my voice steady now. A hush spread like dust settling. Men looked at me like I had spoken in a language no one expected. The trader's eyebrows lifted, surprise flickering into greed. All three, he asked. All three. Money changed hands. More than I could afford. More than I should have given. But some things aren't measured in dollars or gold. Some things are measured in blood owed and lives borrowed. The ropes were cut. The women fell, gravity reclaiming them too fast. I lunged forward and caught the one with the tattoo before she hit the ground. Her body was light, frighteningly so, but she stiffened rather than lean into me. She didn't trust me, not yet. Maybe not ever. She didn't need to. That was not why I was doing this. The crowd dispersed, disappointed the spectacle had ended. The trader tucked his money away like he'd just finished a fine dinner. The woman in my arms raised her head. Dust streaked her cheek. The mark on her shoulder caught the last light of the sun. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The debt had come full circle. Night in the desert comes fast, like a door closing. One moment, the horizon glows gold and copper, and the next, everything sinks into blue and violet shadow. I led the women away from Hollow Bend, not looking back, because I already knew the kind of men who lived in that town. Once they saw something taken from them, something they believed they had a right to, resentment would fester. We had only a short window before someone decided to follow. The women walked even though their bodies trembled from strain and dehydration. These were not fragile souls. Even half broken, they carried themselves like mountains carry snow, weight held with quiet dignity. I chose a place to camp near a cliff outcropping where the rock curved into a shallow alcove. The land gave us some shelter from wind, and the stars overhead spread out wider than a cathedral ceiling. I gathered brush and mesquite while the women sat together, close enough that their shoulders touched. They did not separate, not out of weakness, but because they belonged to each other in a way I had rarely seen among any people. I struck flint, coaxing spark to ember, ember to flame. The light flickered against their faces, illuminating exhaustion, hunger, and a strength I could not name. Their wrists and ankles were raw from the ropes. The one who had nearly fainted earlier sat very still, her breathing thin. When I started to move toward her to check her injuries, the woman with the tattoo shifted, placing herself subtly between us. Not aggressive, protective. I saw the message in her eyes, we are not yours. I nodded and knelt by the fire instead. After a long while, when the flames had grown steady and shadows stretched long, she finally spoke. You paid for us, she said, voice low and steady as the desert at midnight. Why? There was no anger in it. No gratitude either, only truth-seeking. The kind of question where the answer mattered more than the speaker. I sat back on my heels. The fire warmed one side of my face while cold wind touched the other. I didn't want to speak. I didn't want to open that part of myself. But some debts are not paid with silence. 2 winters ago, I began, in the White Ridge Pass, I was left to die. I had taken a bullet. My own unit rode on without me. I should have been dead by nightfall. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion, but in remembrance. She already knew where the story was going. An Apache scout found me, I continued. He carried me to shelter. He kept me alive. He shared his fire. He said nothing. And when morning came, he walked away like I was just another piece of the world he had passed by. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of sage and cold stone. He had your mark, I said softly. The same one. Her gaze lowered to the tattoo on her shoulder, and her fingers brushed it the way one might touch a memory instead of skin. My brother, she said. There was no need for her to ask how I knew. The connection had spoken in its own quiet, undeniable way. The smallest of the 3 women, her sister, no doubt, leaned against her, eyes reflecting the firelight like water reflecting stars. The 3rd woman, older perhaps by a few years, bowed her head. All 3 held grief in the shape of silence. But it was grief worn into something like steel. He is gone now, the younger one whispered. The soldiers came. They burned our winter shelter. He stayed so we could run. They shot him before he could reach us. A long pause. The desert makes silence feel endless. I stared into the flames because looking at them was easier than facing the truth of what I had been part of. The uniform, even if I no longer wore it, stayed in my blood like poison. I could say I hadn't fired. I could say I hadn't agreed. But that didn't change that the harm had come from the side I once stood on. My voice came out rough. I left the army because of him. Because he showed me something I did not deserve. Mercy. The woman with the tattoo looked into me, not at me, but through me, like she was searching for whether the soul behind the words was hollow or whole. She had every right to judge. My fate could have turned on her silence. My brother believed, she said slowly, that a heart is not born to hatred. It learns it, and if a heart can learn hate, it can unlearn it. She kept her eyes on the fire now, but the words were aimed at me just the same. He used to say that kindness given is a circle. It returns, sometimes in ways we do not expect, sometimes not in our lifetime. Her voice wavered slightly, but her posture never did. I did not deserve those words. But I received them, because refusing them would have been a kind of disrespect. The wind picked up, carrying the cold. I stood and retrieved a canteen from my saddlebag. They watched my hands as I moved, careful, slow, no sudden gestures. I offered the canteen, stepping back afterward. They drank in turns. The woman with the tattoo waited until the others finished before she drank herself. When the youngest coughed, I went to my horse and dug through my kit. I had a small pouch of dried willow bark for pain and fever. I knelt near the fire to crush it, then hesitated, remembering the earlier warning in her posture. This time, I held the herbs out in an open palm. The older woman reached for the crushed leaves. They placed them beneath the youngest's tongue, guiding her to swallow with small sips of water. No words were spoken, but the air shifted. Not trust, not yet, but acknowledgement. Hours passed. The sky became thick with stars. Coyotes howled somewhere far off. The fire softened into glowing coals. You can leave at dawn, I said quietly. I won't follow. I won't expect anything. The woman with the tattoo lifted her head. Moonlight traced her cheekbones, turning her eyes into dark silver. No, she said. I blinked. I hadn't expected resistance. We walk together now, she continued. I almost shook my head. You owe me nothing. Her gaze sharpened. Not hard, but clear as river glass. We do not walk with you because we owe, she said. We walk because the circle is not finished. Debts of the heart are not chains. They are paths. Her sisters nodded, not in obedience, but in agreement. Their unity was something carved from fire and blood, unshakable. I felt the weight of her words settle inside me, not heavy like burden, but heavy like purpose. Far in the desert, a gunshot echoed. Faint, distant, but not distant enough. Hollow Bend had noticed their loss. We did not sleep.